I stood frozen at the altar, my wedding dress suddenly feeling like a straitjacket. "I can't marry you," he announced to 300 guests. As tears blurred my vision, a warm hand gently took mine. "Let me help you," whispered a stranger in an expensive suit. Everything changed that day. If you've ever felt your world crumbling around you, this story will show you that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best beginnings. Stay with me, because what happened next will restore your faith in unexpected miracles. They say your wedding day is supposed to be the happiest day of your life. Mine started that way. I woke up at 6 a.m. with butterflies dancing in my stomach, not from nerves but from pure excitement. My name is Winona, and I was about to marry Michael, the man I'd loved for 5 years. The morning was perfect. My bridesmaids filled my hotel suite with laughter as we sipped champagne and got our hair done. My mother cried when she saw me in my dress, a stunning creation of ivory silk and delicate lace that had cost more than my car. "You look like a princess," she whispered, fixing my veil with trembling hands. The church was breathtaking. White roses and baby's breath adorned every pew, and soft candlelight created a romantic glow throughout the sanctuary. 300 guests had gathered to witness our union: family, friends, Michael's business associates, everyone who mattered in our lives. As I waited in the vestibule with my father, I could hear the organ beginning to play. My heart raced with anticipation. This was it. This was the moment I'd dreamed about since I was a little girl. Dad squeezed my hand and smiled. "Ready, sweetheart?" I nodded, unable to speak past the lump of happiness in my throat. The doors opened, and I began my walk down the aisle. Every face turned toward me, every smile reflected my joy. But as I walked, something felt off. Michael stood at the altar, but he wasn't looking at me. His eyes were fixed somewhere to my left, and his face looked pale, almost sick. I told myself he was just nervous. Wedding jitters. Everyone gets them, right? When I finally reached him and my father placed my hand in his, Michael's palm was clammy with sweat. The officiant began speaking, but I barely heard the words. I was too focused on Michael's expression. He looked like a man facing execution, not marriage. "Michael," I whispered, squeezing his hand. "Are you okay?" He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there made my blood run cold. It wasn't love. It wasn't even nervousness. It was guilt. "I can't do this," he said. The words were quiet at first, so quiet I thought I'd misheard. But then he pulled his hand away from mine and said it louder. "I can't marry you, Winona." The church fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. 300 people held their collective breath as my world began to crumble. "What?" The word came out as barely a whisper. This had to be a joke. A terrible, awful joke. "I'm sorry," he continued, and now his voice carried throughout the church. "I thought I could go through with it, but I can't. I'm in love with someone else." Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. My legs felt like jelly. I gripped the altar to keep from falling. "Who?" I managed to ask, though part of me already knew. There was only one person he'd been looking at when I walked down the aisle. Michael turned to my left, to where my bridesmaids stood in their lavender dresses. "Jessica," he said. "I'm in love with Jessica. My maid of honor. My best friend since college. The woman who had helped me pick out my wedding dress, who had planned my bachelorette party, who had held my hand through every moment of wedding planning stress." She stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Winona. We didn't mean for it to happen." The room spun. Voices rose in shock and anger, my father shouting, my mother crying, guests murmuring in disbelief. But all I could focus on was the train wreck of my life happening in real time, in front of everyone I knew. "How long?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tears now flowing freely down my cheeks. 6 months, Jessica whispered. 6 months. They'd been carrying on behind my back for 6 months while I planned our wedding, while I dreamed of our future, while I trusted them both completely. I looked down at my beautiful dress, now feeling like a costume in some cruel play. The weight of 300 pairs of eyes bore into me, some filled with pity, others with shock, a few with the kind of morbid fascination people have for car accidents. I needed to run. I needed to get out of there, but my feet wouldn't move. I was frozen in place, a bride-shaped statue of humiliation and heartbreak. That's when I felt it, a warm, steady hand gently taking mine. "Let me help you," a voice whispered. It was deep, calm, and somehow reassuring despite the chaos around us. I looked up through my tears to see a stranger. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair and the kindest brown eyes I'd ever seen. His charcoal gray suit looked expensive, perfectly tailored, and he carried himself with a quiet confidence that seemed to create a bubble of calm in the storm. "Come on," he said softly, just to me. "Let's get you out of here." I didn't know this man. I'd never seen him before in my life, but in that moment, with my world collapsing around me, his hand felt like a lifeline. I nodded, unable to speak. He tucked my hand into the crook of his arm and began leading me back down the aisle. His presence was solid, protective. He walked slowly, matching my unsteady pace, shielding me from the stares and whispers. "That's it," he murmured encouragingly. "One step at a time. You're doing great." Halfway down the aisle, my father appeared at my other side. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded of the stranger. "Someone who thinks your daughter deserves better than to be a spectacle," the man replied calmly. "I'm getting her out of here. You can come with us or stay and deal with that." He nodded toward the altar where Michael and Jessica still stood. "But I'm taking her somewhere safe." Something in his tone must have convinced my father, because he nodded and took my other arm. Together, they guided me out of the church and into the bright afternoon sunlight. A black limousine waited at the curb. Not the white one Michael and I were supposed to leave in as husband and wife. The stranger opened the door. "This is yours?" I asked, finding my voice at last. He nodded. "Get in. You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to, but you need to get away from here before the guests start coming out." He was right. I could already hear the commotion inside growing louder. Soon, 300 people would spill out of those doors, all wanting to offer condolences or ask questions or simply gawk at the jilted bride. I gathered my dress and climbed into the limo. My father leaned in. "Winona, sweetheart, I don't think—" "It's okay, Dad," I said, surprising myself. I need to get away. I'll call you later." The stranger handed my father a business card. "She'll be safe," he assured him. "You have my word." My father studied the card, and his eyes widened slightly. He looked at the stranger with new interest, then nodded. "Take care of her," he said gruffly. The stranger climbed in beside me, and the limo pulled away from the curb. Through the tinted windows, I watched the church grow smaller, taking with it all my dreams and plans for the future. "I'm Daniel, by the way," the stranger said after a moment of silence. "Winona," I replied automatically, then laughed bitterly. "Though you probably figured that out from the whole abandoned bride thing." "I'm sorry that happened to you," he said simply. "No one deserves that." I looked at him properly for the first time. He was younger than I'd first thought, maybe early 30s, with a face that was handsome in an understated way. There was something about him, a quiet strength, a genuine kindness in his eyes. "Why did you help me?" I asked. "You don't even know me." He was quiet for a moment, looking out the window. "I was supposed to be at that wedding," he said finally. "My business partner's cousin is friends with the groom. I was running late, standing in the back when it happened." "Lucky you got a front row seat to the show," I said bitterly. "That's not how I see it," Daniel replied. "I saw a woman handling an impossible situation with incredible grace. You could have screamed, thrown things, made a scene. No one would have blamed you, but you stood there with dignity even though your heart was breaking. That takes strength." His words made fresh tears spring to my eyes. "I don't feel strong. I feel like an idiot. How did I not see it? 6 months, and I had no idea." "Love makes us trust," he said gently. That's not stupidity, that's humanity. The fault lies with them, not you. The limo had left the city behind now, heading along a tree-lined highway. I realized I hadn't asked where we were going. "Are you kidnapping me?" I asked, half joking. He smiled, the first time I'd seen him do so. It transformed his face, making him look younger, more approachable. "Number. But I thought you might need some space to process everything. My driver is taking us to my home. It's about an hour outside the city. It's quiet, private. You can stay as long as you need to catch your breath, make some phone calls, figure out your next move. Or, if you'd prefer, we can turn around right now, and I'll take you wherever you want to go." I thought about my apartment, the apartment I shared with Michael, about the honeymoon tickets to Bali sitting on our kitchen counter, about the gifts piled in our living room waiting to be opened, about facing my family, my friends, everyone who'd witnessed my humiliation. "No," I said quietly. "Space sounds good." We drove in comfortable silence for a while. Daniel didn't push me to talk, didn't offer platitudes or advice. He simply let me exist in my misery, occasionally handing me tissues from a box he'd procured from somewhere. "Can I ask you something?" I said eventually. "Of course." "Why do you have a limo and a driver?" He shifted slightly, looking uncomfortable for the first time. "I like the privacy," he said simply. "And it lets me work while traveling." It was clearly not the whole answer, but I didn't push. What did it matter anyway? He was a stranger who'd shown me kindness when I needed it most. His reasons for having a limo were his own business. "Thank you," I said suddenly. "For what you did back there. I don't know how long I would have stood there if you hadn't." "You would have found your strength," he said with quiet conviction. "I just offered a hand. You did the walking." Something about the way he said it made me believe him. Maybe I would have found a way to move, to escape, to survive the moment. But I was grateful I hadn't had to find out. The limo turned off the highway onto a private road lined with oak trees. We drove for another 10 minutes before massive iron gates appeared before us. They opened automatically, and we continued up a winding driveway. When the house came into view, I gasped. House was the wrong word. It was a mansion, all stone and glass and architectural brilliance nestled among manicured gardens. "This is your home?" I asked, stunned. Daniel nodded, looking almost embarrassed. "It's a bit much, I know, but it's private, and that's what you need right now." The limo stopped in front of grand entrance steps. Daniel got out first, then offered me his hand. I took it, stepping out into a world that felt surreal after the morning's events. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get you inside. Marie, my housekeeper, will help you out of that dress and find you something comfortable to wear. Then, if you're up for it, we can have some tea and you can decide what you want to do next." I looked down at my wedding dress, now wrinkled and tear-stained. This morning, putting it on had felt like stepping into a fairy tale. Now it felt like wearing the evidence of my naivety. "I'd like that," I said. As Daniel led me up the steps, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. Mascara streaked down my cheeks, my carefully styled hair was a mess, and my dress looked as defeated as I felt. But I was still standing, still walking, still moving forward, even if I didn't know where I was going. Maybe that stranger at the altar had been right. Maybe I was stronger than I thought. Marie turned out to be a motherly woman in her 50s who took one look at me and immediately went into caretaker mode. She whisked me upstairs to a guest suite, helped me out of the dress with gentle efficiency, and provided soft yoga pants and a cashmere sweater that felt like being hugged by a cloud. "You take your time, dear," she said kindly. "Mr. Daniel is in the library when you're ready. No rush." Alone in the luxurious bathroom, I washed my face and tried to make sense of the last hour. This morning I'd been a bride. Now I was, what? A refugee? A charity case? A stranger in a rich man's house wearing borrowed clothes? My phone, which Marie had thoughtfully retrieved from my bridal clutch, buzzed incessantly with calls and texts. My parents, my siblings, other bridesmaids, friends, relatives, everyone wanted to know if I was okay, where I was, what had happened. I sent a group text saying I was safe and needed time, then turned the phone off. When I finally made my way downstairs, I found Daniel in a room lined floor to ceiling with books. He'd changed too, trading his suit for jeans and a simple black sweater. He looked more approachable this way, less like the mysterious stranger who'd rescued me and more like a regular person. "Feeling better?" he asked, gesturing to an armchair across from his. "I don't know what I'm feeling," I admitted, sinking into the leather chair. "Numb, maybe? Like this is all happening to someone else." Marie appeared with a tea tray, complete with delicate china and an array of small sandwiches and cakes. "You need to eat something," she said firmly. "Shock uses up energy." I wasn't hungry, but I nibbled on a sandwich to appease her. Daniel poured tea for both of us, the domestic normalcy of the action contrasting sharply with the surreal circumstances. "I keep thinking I should be angrier," I said suddenly, "screaming, throwing things, plotting revenge, but I just feel empty." "Anger will come," Daniel said. "Grief has stages. Right now you're still in shock. Be patient with yourself." "You sound like you know from experience." A shadow crossed his face. "Different circumstances, but yes, I've had my world pulled out from under me before. It gets better. Different, but better." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping tea like old friends rather than complete strangers. There was something calming about Daniel's presence, a steady quietness that made the chaos in my head feel less overwhelming. "I should probably figure out where I'm going to stay tonight," I said eventually. "I can't go back to the apartment. Not yet." "You're welcome to stay here," Daniel offered. "There are plenty of guest rooms, and you shouldn't be alone right now." I looked at him suspiciously. "Why are you being so nice to me? You don't even know me." He set down his teacup and considered the question. "Have you ever seen someone drowning?" he asked finally. "Not literally, but metaphorically, drowning in a moment in circumstances beyond their control?" I nodded slowly. "When you see that, you have two choices. Walk away and tell yourself it's not your problem, or extend a hand. I've been the person drowning before. Someone extended a hand to me when I needed it most. Today, I got to return the favor." "Who helped you?" I asked softly. "A janitor," he said with a small smile. "I was 22, had just lost everything in a business deal gone wrong. I was sitting on the floor of an empty office building at 2 a.m., wondering if I should just give up. This janitor found me there. Instead of kicking me out, he sat with me, shared his coffee, told me about how he'd rebuilt his life after losing his family in a car accident. He said something I've never forgotten. Rock bottom is just a foundation to build on. What happened to him? His name was George. He died 5 years ago. But before he did, I made sure he never had to work another midnight shift unless he wanted to. Sometimes the smallest kindness can change everything." I felt tears prick my eyes again, but these were different from the tears at the church. Those had been tears of humiliation and heartbreak. These were tears of... what? Gratitude? Hope? The recognition that even in the worst moments, human kindness could shine through? "Thank you," I whispered. "Stay," he said simply. "Take a few days. Figure out your next steps without pressure. Marie will take care of anything you need." I thought about the alternative, a hotel room, alone with my thoughts and the wreckage of my life. "Okay," I agreed. "Just for a few days." Those few days turned into a week. Daniel gave me space but was there when I needed company. We had meals together, walked in his gardens, talked about everything except weddings and betrayal. I learned he ran a technology company, that he loved to read, that he had a dry sense of humor that could make me laugh even when I thought I'd forgotten how. He never asked for my story, never pushed me to talk about Michael or Jessica or the disaster at the church. Instead, he simply offered his presence, steady and undemanding. On the 8th day, I knew I had to face reality. I couldn't hide in Daniel's beautiful house forever, no matter how tempting it was. I should go home, I announced over breakfast, deal with the apartment, figure out the logistics of untangling my life from Michael's. Daniel nodded. Would you like me to come with you? Moral support? The offer was tempting, but I shook my head. This is something I need to do alone. But Daniel, I don't know how to thank you for everything. You saved me that day. You saved yourself, he corrected gently. I just offered a hand. As his driver prepared to take me back to the city, Daniel handed me a business card. My direct line, he said. If you need anything, a friend, a refuge, someone to yell at about the unfairness of life, call me. I looked at the card, noting for the first time the name of his company. My eyes widened. Wait, you're that Daniel? The one who invented... Guilty, he said with a sheepish smile, though I prefer to think of myself as the Daniel who makes a decent cup of tea and knows when to shut up and let someone process. You're a billionaire, I said, stunned. All this time, I'd been staying in the home of one of the tech industry's most successful entrepreneurs, and he'd been making me sandwiches and listening to me cry. I'm a person, he corrected. The money is just numbers in an account. It doesn't change the fact that we're all just humans trying to figure out this messy thing called life. 3 months later, I was arranging roses in my flower shop when the bell above the door chimed. I'd thrown myself into the business after the wedding disaster, finding solace in creating beauty for other people's celebrations. The irony wasn't lost on me, the jilted bride now making wedding bouquets. But flowers had always been my passion, and I refused to let Michael take that from me too. Be right with you, I called, not looking up from the arrangement I was working on. Take your time, a familiar voice said. I'm in no rush. I looked up to see Daniel standing in my shop, hands in his pockets, smiling that quiet smile of his. Daniel, what are you doing here? I needed flowers, he said simply. Heard this was the best shop in the city. Liar, I laughed. You don't even know what a tulip looks like. That's hurtful, and mostly true, he admitted. Okay, full disclosure, I wanted to see how you were doing. You stopped returning my calls. I felt guilty. He'd checked in regularly for the first month after I left his house, but I'd gradually stopped responding, not because I didn't appreciate his concern, but because I was trying to stand on my own feet. I'm sorry, I said. I needed to prove I could do this alone. And have you? He asked, looking around the shop with genuine interest. Proven it? I followed his gaze, feeling a surge of pride. The shop was small but beautiful, filled with buckets of fresh flowers and displays of my arrangements. I'd poured everything into it, my savings, my energy, my need to build something that was entirely mine. Yeah, I said softly. I think I have. Good, he said. Now that you've proven you don't need anyone, maybe you'd be willing to have dinner with a friend? No rescue required, just conversation and possibly some of that lasagna from the place around the corner that you mentioned once? You remembered that? I have an excellent memory for important things, he said. So? Dinner? Looking at him standing there among my flowers, this billionaire who'd shown up to check on the girl he'd helped escape a wedding disaster, I felt something shift in my chest. Not love. It was too soon for that, my heart still too bruised. But possibility, hope. The recognition that not all men were Michael, that kindness existed without agenda. Okay, I agreed. But I'm buying, he laughed. Deal. Though fair warning, I eat a lot. That dinner turned into a weekly tradition. Every Wednesday, Daniel would show up at my shop at closing time, and we'd try a new restaurant. He never called them dates, never pushed for more than friendship, but slowly, incrementally, I began to heal. He was there the day I signed the divorce papers, waiting outside the lawyer's office with coffee and a sympathetic ear. He was there when I had my first Bridezilla customer who reminded me painfully of my own wedding planning. He was there when Jessica tried to reach out with a tearful apology that I wasn't ready to hear. "You know what the worst part is?" I told him one evening over Thai food. "I don't miss Michael. I miss the idea of him. The future I thought we were building. But the actual person? I don't think I ever really knew him." "Maybe that's the gift," Daniel suggested. "Better to find out who someone really is before you spend decades with them." "Speaking from experience?" I asked. In all our conversations, Daniel rarely talked about his own romantic history. He nodded slowly. "I was engaged once, years ago before the company took off. She left me for someone with better prospects. Funny thing is, she tried to come back after I made my first million. Couldn't understand why I wasn't interested." "Because she showed you who she really was," I said. "Exactly. When someone shows you their true character, believe them the first time." 6 months after the wedding disaster, I was finally feeling like myself again. The shop was thriving, I had my own apartment, and I'd even started to forgive Jessica, though we'd never be friends again. Michael had married her in a quiet courthouse ceremony, and I wished them well. They deserved each other. Daniel and I still had our weekly dinners, but something had shifted between us. The careful boundaries we'd maintained were blurring. He'd catch my hand across the table and hold it a moment too long. I'd find excuses to hug him goodbye. We danced around the growing feelings, both too cautious to risk our friendship. Then came the day everything changed. I arrived at my shop early one morning to find Daniel's limo parked outside. He was leaning against it, holding 2 coffee cups and looking unusually nervous. "Morning delivery?" I asked, taking the coffee gratefully. "Something like that," he said. "Winona, I need to tell you something." My heart sank. This was it. He'd found someone, was moving away, was tired of our friendship. I braced myself. "I'm in love with you," he said simply. I nearly dropped my coffee. "What?" "I've been in love with you for months," he continued, the words tumbling out like he'd been holding them back too long. "Maybe since that first day, when you took my hand and trusted me despite everything. I've tried to be patient, to give you space to heal, to be the friend you needed. But I can't pretend anymore." "Daniel," I started, but he held up a hand. "I know you might not feel the same way. I know you might need more time, but I had to tell you, because hiding it was killing me. You don't have to say anything now. Just think about it." I set down my coffee and stepped closer to him. "You beautiful, complicated man," I said softly. "Do you really think I've been having dinner with you every week just for the company?" Hope flickered in his eyes. "You mean—" Instead of answering with words, I kissed him. Right there on the sidewalk, in front of my flower shop, with the morning sun warming our faces. It was nothing like the passionate kisses Michael and I had shared. This was gentler, deeper, a coming home rather than a conquest. When we finally broke apart, Daniel was smiling, that rare, full smile that transformed his entire face. "So," he said, slightly breathless, "dinner tonight?" "It's only Tuesday," I pointed out. "I'm thinking we need to expand our schedule," he said. "Monday dinners, Tuesday dinners, Wednesday dinners." "Careful," I laughed. "People might think we're dating." "Good," he said, pulling me close again. "Let them think that." A year later, I stood in my flower shop after hours, working on a special arrangement. White roses and baby's breath, just like at my first wedding, but this time mixed with deep red dahlias and trailing ivy. This time, the flowers were for me, but I was making the bouquet myself. The bell chimed, and I smiled without looking up. "You're early." "Couldn't wait," Daniel said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "How's the bouquet coming?" "See for yourself." He studied my work, then kissed my temple. "It's perfect. You're perfect." "I'm not," I corrected. "I'm real, flawed, still a little broken in places." "That's what I said. Perfect." Tomorrow we'd stand in Daniel's garden with just our immediate families and a few close friends. No church, no 300 guests, no lavender bridesmaids' dresses. Just us, making promises we knew we could keep. "Any regrets?" Daniel asked. "About the small wedding?" I turned in his arms to face him. I already had the big wedding. Look how that turned out. This is different, he said softly. Yes, I agreed. This is real. My phone buzzed with a text. I glanced at it and couldn't help but laugh. What is it? Daniel asked. Jessica. She heard about our engagement through mutual friends. She's asking if she and Michael can come to the wedding, says they want to wish us well. Daniel raised an eyebrow. That's bold. That's desperate, I corrected. I heard through the grapevine that Michael's been cheating on her with someone from his office. Karma has a sense of humor, Daniel observed. What are you going to tell her? I thought about it for a moment. A year ago, I would have been gleeful at the news of their relationship falling apart. Now I just felt a distant sort of pity. I'll tell her the wedding is family only, I decided. But maybe I'll meet her for coffee sometime, for closure. That's very generous of you. That's what happens when you're happy, I said, setting my phone aside. You stop needing revenge because you realize the best revenge is living well. Speaking of living well, Daniel said, producing a small velvet box from his pocket. I have something for you. Daniel, you already gave me an engagement ring. This is different. Open it. Inside was a delicate silver charm bracelet with a single charm, a tiny hand reaching out. To remind you, he said, fastening it around my wrist, that sometimes accepting help is the bravest thing you can do. I traced the charm with my finger, remembering that terrifying moment at the altar when his hand had found mine. What if I'd been too proud to take it? What if I'd stood there frozen until security had to escort me out? What if I'd missed this chance at real love because I was too afraid to trust a stranger's kindness? I love you, I told him. Thank you for being patient with me. I love you too, he replied. Thank you for being brave enough to take my hand. The next morning, as I stood in the garden wearing a simple cream dress that felt nothing like that elaborate wedding gown, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the humiliation, the heartbreak, the slow climb back to myself, and the unexpected love that had grown from the ashes of disaster. Daniel waited for me under an arch of roses, his eyes full of the same steady kindness that had saved me that awful day. This time, there were no doubts, no cold sweats, no looking at anyone but me. Ready? My father asked, offering his arm. More than ready, I said. As I walked toward Daniel, I caught sight of two unexpected guests at the back of the small gathering, Michael and Jessica, looking uncomfortable but present. I hadn't invited them, but I suspected my mother had something to do with their appearance. The old me would have been furious. The new me just smiled. Let them see what real love looked like. Let them witness what they'd lost. Not the fancy wedding or the expensive reception, but the way Daniel's face lit up when he saw me, the way he stepped forward to meet me halfway, the way he took my hand like he was handling something precious. Hi, he whispered when I reached him. Hi, yourself, I whispered back. The ceremony was simple, the vows heartfelt, the kiss a promise of all the years to come. As we walked back down the makeshift aisle as husband and wife, I caught Michael's eye. He looked older, tired, diminished somehow. Jessica clung to his arm, but there was a desperation in her grip that I recognized. She was holding on to something that was already slipping away. I felt Daniel squeeze my hand. You okay? Perfect, I said, meaning it. Later, as we danced at the small reception, Daniel spun me around and pulled me close. So, Mrs. Montenegro, any regrets about marrying a stranger who crashed your first wedding? Only one, I said. He looked concerned. What's that? I wish I'd met you first, I said. Think of all the time we could have saved. He laughed, that rich, warm sound I'd come to love. But then we wouldn't have our story. And admit it, it's a pretty great story. I thought about it. The disaster, the rescue, the friendship, the love that grew slowly but surely, the way we'd both been broken and found healing in each other, the second chance at happiness I'd never expected. You know what? I said, standing on my tiptoes to kiss my husband. You're right. I wouldn't change a thing. And I meant it. Every heartbreak, every tear, every moment of despair had led me here, to this garden, to this man, to this life I never could have imagined when I stood at that altar in my first wedding dress. Sometimes the worst moments really do lead to the best beginnings. Sometimes a stranger's hand reaching out in your darkest hour can change everything. Sometimes you have to let your world fall apart to discover it was built on the wrong foundation anyway. As Daniel held me close and the stars came out overhead, I sent up a silent thank you to the universe for that horrible, wonderful day when my fiancé publicly rejected me and a billionaire took my hand. It was the day my real life began. Sometimes our biggest heartbreaks are just redirections to our true destiny. If Winona's story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear that better days are coming. Subscribe for more stories that prove love finds us when we least expect it. Remember, your plot twist might be just around the corner.